Hi everyone. So today's video is going to be about the ancient origins of approach anxiety. So for those of you who don't know, approach anxiety is that fear you get when you want to talk to a woman who you see in public, but you just can't. That feeling of hesitation. So this feeling is nearly universal among men, and it has ancient evolutionary origins that I'm going to be explaining in this video. So here's a thought experiment. Imagine you could only date women from a small social group of 50 people for the rest of your life. In this tight-knit group, everyone is aware of everyone else's affairs. So if you approach a woman, word will spread quickly that you did. How would you feel as you were about to approach? Well, most men's answer would be sheer terror, and that's understandable, because you would be using one of your very limited selection of tries in every single approach you did. And if you messed it up, there's a good chance you wouldn't pass on your genes. So it's understandable why this scenario would be very scary. But this is exactly how our ancestors lived. The circumstances under which prehistoric men lived are this. So they had a very limited selection of available women, and messing up an approach could mean you wouldn't pass on your genes, because they lived in very small bands of like 50 to 100 people. They didn't even live in tribes for most of human history. They lived in these small groups where everyone knew everyone, and word would spread quickly if you made a mistake, if you approached a woman in the wrong way. And more broadly speaking, social rejection could mean death. If you got rejected by your community, you would be on your own, and there's a good chance you would die very quickly. So only 40% of men passed on their genes throughout all of human history, compared to 80% of women. Ancient men had it rough. So how does this manifest in the modern world? Men are still scared, often petrified, of approaching women. The vast majority of men haven't cold approached a woman in the past year. And for most men, telling them to cold approach feels like telling them to commit social suicide. So I'm almost certain that most men have not approached a woman in the past year. That seems like it doesn't even need explaining or research. I can just tell from seeing all the men around me. They don't have the courage to do it. And I understand completely why you'd be scared, because there are evolutionary reasons for that. Rejection had huge consequences for prehistoric men, so men evolved to avoid rejection at all costs, or so this hypothesis goes. So here's the evolutionary mismatch here. Rationally, cold approach is a very low-risk activity in a modern developed country. Out in public, you can approach as many women as you want, and it isn't really an issue. So poisoning of the well isn't really an issue like it is in a social circle, like if you approached a woman in your friend group. That could have big ramifications for your reputation within that group. But if you live in a mid-sized city or larger, you can approach a woman every single day and still come nowhere near poisoning the well. The authorities are unlikely to get involved if you live in a Western country, so long as you aren't harassing, stalking, or touching without consent. So basically just following common sense. Most of you guys don't do that. Most guys are decent enough when they approach a woman. You aren't doing this stuff, so you don't have anything to be scared of, really, besides the pain of rejection. The thing most of us fear, if we're being honest, is the pain of rejection. And it makes sense with evolution, because rejection had huge ramifications for our ancestors, but it doesn't for us. So here's the confession. I'm a hypocrite. I have very bad approach anxiety, and I've only managed to conquer it and approach a woman a handful of times in the past year. So I'm sure I'm doing better than the average guy, but I still probably fear approaching as much as your average guy does. I just consciously try to override that fear by thinking about the benefits of building this confidence, building the confidence that I can go up to a woman and show some intent. That's something most guys can't do. And if you can do that, you're going to be ahead of most other guys. You're going to be in a good place if you can go up to a woman and show intent. So I've been doing a challenge to progressively desensitize me to this by just starting a conversation with a woman every single day, and maybe progressively starting to show some intent, starting to do some actual approaches. So if you want to discuss any of this, you can contact me on Instagram, and we can discuss our experiences and maybe trade notes. So thanks for watching, everyone. This was just a short little video, a short little explanatory video about approaching, for anyone who is curious about why they have this fear inside of them. It completely makes sense because it's just evolution. So thanks for watching.